All right, Big welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. It is Wednesday. It is August 10th. It's Eddie and his chief here again. We told you we have an interview today. We are joined by Chapman, Maclain, Way. They are filmmakers. We've actually talked about and done a doc review on one of their docs. They do the Untold series on Netflix. They did the Crime and Penalties one, if you remember the Danbury Trashers.
I think everyone remembers that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, a little bit of a different vibe today. We just kind of want to bring these guys on. They also did Wild Country. Have you guys seen that?
Wild Country.
Wild Country. Yeah. You're right.
That I've said it to you. I've said it to other people. If you haven't seen it, you've messed up, but it's not too late. Watch that documentary this weekend. It's spectacular.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And they have a new series coming out. They have another 4 parts of Untold. And the first one leads off with Manti Te'o, fake girlfriend story. So that comes out August 14th. But yeah, we're just going to send it over to Chapman and Maclain. And it was a fun sit down for like 20 minutes or whatever it was.
I'd love to have those guys come in the office at some point.
That'd be fun. So before we really get to it, though, we do want to talk about Miller Lite, though, of course, because summer is all about outdoor cookouts and backyard get-togethers, which means plenty of Miller time. Miller Lite, together with Banana Beef, the most authentic Chicago hot dog brand, is sponsoring happy hours at selected bars and restaurants in the Chicagoland area through August 23rd. And the first 500 guests will receive a free Vienna Beef Chicago-style hot dog. And at the happy hours, Chicagoans will also have the chance to win hot swag items and prizes like sports and concert tickets, koozies, pint glasses, and most importantly, stain-resistant shirts. So people can eat their hot dogs freely with no worries and with no worries about mustard stains. It's nice.
I love that they're giving away stain-resistant shirts, but if that technology exists, why isn't every shirt stain resistant?
That's a good point.
That should just be baked in. I'll pay an extra $1 a shirt if that's what it costs. So,
that's
but yeah, that event, we've been to them. They're great. Can't beat a Vienna beef dog. The only way you can top it is when you wash it down with a Miller Lite. And so now they're combining forces. You go to MillerLite.com/ChicagoStyle to learn more about event details and retailer information.
Yep, there are coaches today in the Northwest Side. And next time you're getting ready to enjoy cold ones with your crew, go to MillerLite.com/redline to find the delivery options near you. Or you can pick up some Miller Lite pretty much anywhere that they sell beer. It's Miller time. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
That's nothing.
Boom. All right, let's get to Chapman and Maclain. All right, so now we are joined by Chapman and Maclain, Way, filmmakers. They've done the Untold series on Netflix, also Wild Country. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks for doing this. Sports and cults, we love that shit, so we're happy to have you guys on.
All right, we found our audience finally. It's good to be you guys.
I feel like we should just offer you guys jobs because we talk about these two things like almost exclusively, sports and cults. Yeah. So we can make this show a 4-man team.
Let's do it. I'm in.
Well,
we Mac though. We don't need Mac. I think it's just the three of us would do a better job. But I mean, if we have to let him in, we can, I guess.
All right. So we'll let you on our show, but then we want to be in the credits of your next documentary, whether or not we do any work.
Deal.
Okay.
Done.
So obviously we got the new series of Untold coming out. Pretty much the first one that really caught our radar. I think it was maybe the first one you guys ever did was the Trashers one, right?
Yeah, we did a volume 1, and we had some cool stories last volume. You know, we had Mouse at the Palace, and one on Caitlyn Jenner, and then one on the Danbury Trashers, which was one Mac and I directed, which is just this outrageous hockey mob documentary that Mac and I just always thought was a hilariously wild story, and it was a thrill to make it.
What's the process for selecting what you're going to make a documentary about? Because a low-level minor league hockey, it was a fascinating and awesome documentary, but it's not something that you would be like, let's make a documentary about Danbury, Connecticut minor league hockey like that. How do you select things and how do you find these stories? Did you already know about that before you made it?
Yeah. It's always like a little bit of an uphill battle pitching that to Netflix. You know, like, look, we're going to do a big documentary on a minor league hockey team. They're like, what? Can we do Michael Jordan instead? But I think once we kind of told them the story, like, look, it's run by, a mob associate, Jimmy Galante, who they modeled The Sopranos after, and his 17-year-old son owns it, and they just beat the crap out of all the teams. Then Netflix was like, oh, this sounds awesome. And we were off to the races. But yeah, I think Mac and I, we're like story first documentary filmmakers and character first filmmakers. Like, we just love different, interesting, fascinating people and weird, wild stories with twists and turns. And that's always kind of like what we're looking for in these things. And so we have a long Word document of like our dream stories. And we have a huge one with a bunch of sports stuff on there. And we kind of went to the drawing board for volume 2 here and picked out kind of 4 more that we're excited to launch next month.
Did you
always take these people too, you know, like you got to pick up the phone, you got to call them, you got to go have dinner with them, you got to like be invited over for dinner. And like, it's just kind of like an amazing life experience to have, sitting across people who have just like the most unbelievable life stories to tell. Like AJ Galante was made general manager of a professional hockey team at 17 years old. Jimmy Galante's story is like straight out of a Martin Scorsese film. So like you can read about them and you can research them, but when you really like sit down with them and hear the stories come out of their mouths, we're pretty shameless. Immediately we start telling these people like, we got to make a documentary together. People are going to love to hear this story. So that's usually the moment when we decide to go do it.
Has anyone ever said no? Like, no.
It like rarely. I think like most people that we're going after, it's usually like the biggest thing that ever happened to them in their life. So like when you're talking to AJ Galante, it's like, yeah, this was the biggest story of my life. And they're eager to kind of talk about it and like work through it and kind of make sense of their stories. And so more often than not, we get yeses. I think it takes a lot of courage to like get in front of the camera and kind of tell your life story, warts and all, which is kind of what we're looking for. None of these are puff pieces. It's all like, man, give us the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it takes a lot of bravery and courage to do that. And so we're, at the end of the day, we're like ultimately thankful for the people that like trust us to kind of tell their story. But we do get no's occasionally, but kind of keep moving.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I wanted to get to, because I didn't know you guys were behind this until we started talking about doing this interview. Was Wild Wild Country just absolutely blew my mind. So that's the process I want to know about, where you go to these people 30 years later. So it's like, so you were in a cult, huh? And they're like, yeah, I was in a cult. Like, so like, how do you, and you had a lot of these people who are, you know, it's been, I don't know, maybe 50 years, right? Since that. And what is that conversation like? And how do you have to draw things out of them, or are they kind of protective and ashamed of being in a thing like that?
Everyone's always a little hesitant when you first reach out. I think that's like natural. I think Mac and I try to pride ourselves on being like agenda-less filmmakers. Like we really just like are interested in your story and telling your story and like helping you shape that story and tell the best version of your story that you can. Like, we really kind of view our subjects as like very close collaborators. I don't think it's like traditional journalism where we're just asking questions and making them answer, but like really trying to help them shape and tell their stories. And through that, we get to know our subjects really well. And I think ultimately the benefit for us is like, I think we get like very vulnerable, provocative interviews from people who trust that like, we're not going to twist their words. We're not going to try to make them look bad. Like, we want to honor whatever your viewpoint is, even if it's something that we don't agree with. Like, we are at the mercy of your story and your life. And like, we're going to do the best job we can as filmmakers to kind of get your viewpoint across. And I think ultimately that's an interesting proposition for a lot of people who want their story told.
Back to the Trashers one too. Did you guys know right away that you guys had gold?
Yeah. 100%. One conversation with Galante and a quick follow-up with Jimmy, and we were like, this is amazing. And I mean, this sounds so arrogant, but like every documentary is such a miracle. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you're done with them, and they take years to make. Like I wish we could figure out how to make these things faster, but they just take a while. And you look back and you're like, my God, if we didn't get that binder full of DVDs that had every single Trasher game on it, like how do we make this documentary? Or if AJ and Jimmy kind of weren't as compelling as they were, like how do we make this documentary? But it really was like a pretty quick, that one we jumped into faster than normal. There was something about a 17-year-old becomes the general manager of a professional hockey team that put like a massive smile on my face every time I said that out loud. I was like, that is hilarious. And I would look at these photos of AJ and his wardrobe, and he's got like the triple XL jersey and the backwards hat, and he's got like a nice Diamond Ice Trasher logo Netflix. And I'm like, yeah, this is like meant for us. We have to do whatever it takes to make this.
And the thing about it too, did you guys see it coming? Because you see AJ initially, and you see like this kind of Kevin Federline looking dude, and you're like, your quick intuition is to hate him, but he was endearing, and I think people liked him. We talked about, we just never saw it coming. Were you surprised by that reaction that everyone liked him?
Yeah, I think that's like the first thing we realized hanging out with AJ. I think it's why we like to spend so much time with our subjects, because there is a very easy surface level of AJ where you could be like, oh, this kid's annoying. He comes from a wealthy family. But you spend 5 minutes with them and you're like, man, the kid is hilarious. He's funny. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. He's genuine. He's honest. And like we have faith in our audiences that like if they stay on the journey, they'll be able to pick up on all these different facets of AJ's personality as well. And by the end of the documentary, everyone's just like, dude, I thought I was going to hate this kid. And like, I love this kid. Like, he's like amazing. And like, I think with AJ, like there's people who are good off camera and then they get on camera and maybe they clam up a little bit, which is natural. But I mean, within 2 minutes of interviewing AJ, like I was literally in tears, just trying not to laugh because he was so damn funny. And that's when I knew like, this is going to be a special doc, because like, I don't laugh very easily. And like, this kid's literally got me in tears right now, 2 minutes into our interview.
He came to one of our hockey events through Spittin' Chicklets. He was, and we had like NHL guys there, and obviously Biz and Witter, big stars. Everybody just wanted a picture with AJ Galante. Like you guys made him like the biggest celebrity at our event, and he was great. He was awesome. So that came across, and he was somehow you took Kevin Federline and made him like a lovable guy. Like that's.
We were 2 minutes into his interview and he was telling us about The Rock showing up at his birthday and China. He was saying like China ate all the hamburgers and none of the kids had hamburgers to eat at the birthday party. And I was just like dying from laughing. I was like, this kid is amazing. Like what a life story. And he's still like, I think we're still good friends. We love to keep in contact with him. We text a lot. And it's been really cool to see him get involved in like the wrestling stuff that he's so passionate about. And being on, I know he did like a collaboration with Barstool Sports with some clothes and sweatshirts. That was super cool, and he keeps us up to date on everything, so it's been awesome for us to see him kind of get a moment here where he gets to shine.
Hey, let's take another quick break here because I want to talk to you guys about letting loose, and you could let loose going to a concert, a sporting event, whatever it is. Use the Game Time app, because the Game Time app is the exclusive ticketing partner of Barstool Sports. Game Time is a ticketing app that makes it easier than ever to score last-minute deals on tickets to sports, concerts, and shows, and they guarantee the lowest price. They crack the code on how to score deals on last-minute tickets, and you can find MLB tickets for under $15 all in on Game Time. Yankees tickets as low as $14, Red Sox $14, Mets $13, Braves $14, Cubs $12. You name your team, Game Time has the hookup on deals for you to get out to the ballpark. Ton of other concerts going on. There are definitely big events coming up before Labor Day as well. So go check out the Game Time app. The best part is you get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time. Go to the account tab to create a login and redeem code DOGWALK for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Download Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's hop back in to the show. And so in the new season coming up, what's the date it comes out?
So The Girlfriend Who Didn't Exist comes out August 16th, the Manti Te'o 2-part documentary. And then there's an episode, 3 more episodes every Tuesday after that.
And were you guys, how much involved were you guys with the Donaghy one?
So yeah, the way we run it is like Mac and I are kind of like creative showrunners of the series. We don't direct everything, but like we're kind of creatively overseeing story, structure, kind of making sure it all fits in the Untold universe. So we didn't direct that one. It was directed by Ryan Duffy and Tony Vaneco, who did an incredible job. But it's still like Mac and ours baby to a degree. You know, we obsess over these things, and it's kind of what we're doing day in and day out is kind of developing, producing, and helping run this show.
Was Notre Dame helpful, or are they putting up roadblocks to get this made?
No, they were pretty. They were great. Like, okay. I think that like. Their first question, which I understood, was like, is Manti Te'o a part of this? And when we were able to say, like, yes, he is, and we're doing like a multi-day long interview with Manti, and he's going to be talking about this story in full context. From then on out, they were fully supportive. We interviewed Jack Swarbrick, who was their athletic director, and they had kind of some great archive on the season's run. And so they've been really good.
What was the most challenging part to get to come together for that one? Because I think it's one of those stories that you'll just never forget.
Oh,
and I think this, to my knowledge, this is like the first real thing that I've seen been done on it. Where I mean, I don't know. So what was the most challenging subject to lock down?
I think the most challenging thing is like this is a story that for Manti and Naya, the person behind the kind of catfishing scandals, is like I think for both of them. one of the most like humiliating, painful things they've ever gone through in their life. And I think for a lot of people on the outside, it was kind of a bizarre, funny story with a ton of memes and like, what, the girlfriend doesn't exist. And like, it was just kind of almost like this comedic, bizarre story for the rest of the world. But to get two people to be like, this is the kind of most humiliating thing that ever happened to me, and let's sit down in a chair and talk about it for 2 days, I think that's always a challenge. But I think it was like kind of right place, right time. Manti's NFL career was winding down. I think he felt like he'd never given like the full story on what happened and what this was all about and kind of how it affected him on and off the field. And I think he was like excited at the opportunity to like once and for all kind of tell his full version of what happened. And he gave just like an incredibly raw and vulnerable interview that I think is going to surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, I can't wait for that one, because that story, I just, like you're saying, it became a meme. Like, we made T-shirts about that.
Yeah.
Play like your fake dead girlfriend died today or something like that. So it's one of those things where it's like you remember where you were, and like you said, no one's really touched about it other than making jokes. So I want to get to a place where you can humanize Manti, who, like, I am a Notre Dame fan, and it took this guy who was a great player and tarnished his legacy with Notre Dame and Notre Dame fans like forever. So I'm hoping this can be, are we going to see a redemption arc kind of for Manti, or is it kind of what?
Yeah. Go ahead, Mac. You want to talk?
I think so. I don't know. It's like, obviously the story happened almost like 10 years ago. So I think like you obviously just have the hindsight of being able to like grow and mature and get like a new perspective on it. I think there is like, he really gives like a pretty powerful emotional monologue at the end that doesn't really pull punches, because it really does kind of show the impact that this singular event had on this man's life and his career. And Naya obviously has kind of gone through a tremendous journey of self-discovery herself. She identified woman these days, and so it was just like a really fascinating moment for us to go back and touch base with all these people. It was something that we were like super grateful for.
I mean, I'll say this, that feels like it was what really made catfishing like come into the limelight. I feel like that fucking Nev guy on MTV, he owes Manti a little bit of a piece of whatever that show made, because that was
he a part of this documentary?
Nev is not in it, but it's true. Like when we started researching it, we're like, shit, like no one had really heard the term catfishing. Like, it wasn't like in our lexicon, like it wasn't something super known about. And I think one of the cool parts about documentaries is you get to kind of peel back the curtain and find out like how these characters got to this point and place in time. And I think like going on Manti's whole journey from his childhood and growing up in like a very strict religious conservative community, and coming from like this like really like patriarchal family, and moving to Hawaii and like experiencing a culture that was wildly different than his culture in Hawaii. And like, I think you start to see an interior to Manti's life that he hasn't talked about before, that kind of maybe helps you understand how he got involved in this whole scandal. And so I think that's like the really cool things about docs, is you get to kind of peel back the curtain and get an inside look on like what they were going through at this time.
Yeah. Sorry, man, you can go.
Scandal too are just kind of wild to learn about. Like, not only is it humanizing it, but like it was like, it's kind of incredible to learn how Manti could theoretically like fall for this, and just how much like effort and behind the scenes was put into into catfishing him. It was just like, I remember reading it, but doing this documentary, my eyes got like totally open to like, oh my God, I had no idea that this was all happening, but between Naya and Manti.
Yeah, and we actually just did a podcast episode about Coney 2012, which was, in that same year. And I feel that's when like the age of innocence for me on the internet just died. It's like, Manti, the number one linebacker in the country, has a fake girlfriend, and like this Coney thing is going on, and that blew up and went away in like a month, and wasn't, who knows how real that was. And it was just like that. I feel like telling the story of the internet at that time is fascinating on its own. So I can't wait to see that, the catfishing angle of how that could be possible.
And like that you say that, because I think that is a kind of a big theme of our doc. And what we realize is like there is a lot of kind of catfishing content and shows out there, but they usually like focus on the victim a lot. And I think one of the things that we got to really do was like spend a ton of time with Naya, who was like the person who created this fake online identity. And I think what's really, really surprising is like you learn that like really this Facebook profile was like this search for identity for her, and it becomes much more nuanced and complicated than I think people understand. And I think it kind of taps into like early internet culture and people like figuring out like the positives of what the internet can do. Like it can bring people together, which it did for Manti and Naya. Essentially, these were kind of like two lost souls who found each other at 18 years old and shared a similar background and shared this connection, which is really powerful to see. But I think the story also shows some of the negative things that can happen and how people can use the internet and online identities to also cause damage. So I think it dives into both of those things equally.
Yeah, no, we're definitely excited for it. And like you said, too, about it just these things, they take a while. And I actually made one for Barstool last summer or 2 summers ago, maybe. And you ever hear the story of the Travis, the killer chimpanzee? No. Yeah.
We'll send you a link.
We'll send you. I'd love some tips.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's a crazy one. But like you're right, and just what goes into it, it's just you think you're there, but then you're not there. What do you guys find is like the most challenging part to get these kind of these things to come together?
I think the most difficult part for us is like we're not doing like topic-based storytelling. Like we're really trying to do like first-person narrative-based storytelling where like you go on a journey with these characters. There's a beginning, middle, and end. It's not so much like here's this expert talking about this issue and then we go to another expert. Like we're really trying to create a narrative arc and a roller coaster for the audience to go on and hit the twists and turns and the reveals. And that just takes like a lot of structuring and a lot of getting it wrong. Like you got to like kind of fuck it up and like, oh, this sucks. And then kind of rework it and go back to the drawing board. And so you just need time to like figure that out. And luckily, like Netflix has always been super supportive of us, like giving us the time and resources to figure it out and kind of make sure we get it right. And so I think that's for us what's always like the longest part, like having time to mess it up first and then solve it and fix it and then kind of make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Are the challenges with dealing with the people the same for with these iconic kind of sports moments like we've talked about with, on that genre, or is it more challenging to do like more of the cult stuff? And is there one that you prefer as like a generic subject matter to dive into?
I think we like to kind of like bounce back and forth. I'd say like the thing that I think we make like a lot of different documentaries on a lot of different topics, but I'd say like the thing that probably unites them the most in terms of working with our subjects is like 9 out of 10 times the thing that we are talking to our subjects about is the most important and the most impactful thing that has kind of ever happened to them in their entire life, right? Whether that's Manti Te'o or Ron Artest or Malice at the Palace or Caitlyn Jenner and her 1976 Olympic win or Ma Anand Sheila and the creation of Rajneeshpuram in Oregon. Like these are like major life moments that happen to them. And so which creates like landmines, obviously, when you work with people, but it also like just elevates the stakes of the story in a way that like we really need as documentary filmmakers. Like they come to these interviews with like pretty high stake for them. This is important stuff that happened to them, and they have a pretty clear perspective on what transpired. And so for us, it's kind of just not a game, but a working relationship of pulling out that interview performance in a way that is clear and concise and is important.
I think that the challenging thing with sports too is like when you're dealing with professional athletes, there's a lot of managers and agents, and a lot of these guys have their own production companies now. And like, I think for us, it's always like, man, we're not interested in like the time you scored the winning touchdown or the time you won the big championship game. Like that's awesome, and that'll be a part of it. But like, we're really more interested in like probing the more like human elements and the human side of your story and like the journey you went on, not as an athlete, but as a human being. And when we find the right athletes who are like not afraid of that and like have the courage to be like, yeah, let's sit down and like, you can ask me anything you want and I'm going to answer you honestly, is really powerful. And I think the other thing is like a lot of athletes, like they just in a good way, they don't really care what you think about them. Like they've been conditioned to do one thing, and that's like to be the best at their sport and their endeavor, and how you feel about them or what you think about their opinions, they don't really give a shit. And for us, we're like, that's amazing because it makes for really, really provocative interviews where they're not like overthinking or trying to interpret how someone's going to interpret their words. They're just like, man, here's my story, take it or leave it. Like, I really don't care how you feel about it, but this is what happened to me. I think that's why we love kind of talking to athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
No, definitely. And no, thanks guys for jumping on. And I'm sorry if this is out of bounds, but I got to ask, I saw that you guys are, Kurt Russell is your uncle. Is that right?
One of the brothers. Yeah.
The nephew of Snake Plissken.
Can I get your favorite Kurt Russell movie?
Captain Ron, without a doubt. Captain Ron is probably my go-to. What's yours, Mac?
Captain Ron is an all-time classic, no doubt. I had it on VHS and watched it on. Captain Ron is a dark film about how like Captain Ron is essentially trying to steal Martin Short's wife in that film. So it's hilarious, but it's like if that gets made today, I think people are gonna be like, "Oh my god." I loved Used Cars. It was one of his earlier films, but he plays a used car salesman. It's absolutely hilarious.
Big Trouble in Little China. That was a huge one for us growing up. I had all the action figures, and I think maybe Big Trouble in Little China.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, being a Chicago guy, I gotta say Backdraft. I love
the classic. Backdraft's classic.
I think that was my first rated R movie.
Was it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Saw it at a
Big
neighbor's
deal.
house. Yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah. But thanks again, guys. One more time, where can people find you? When does everything come out? What are we looking for now?
Yeah, we're looking Girlfriend Who Didn't Exist, August 16th, 2-part documentary on Manti Te'o. August 16th. The following Tuesday, we're doing The Rise and Fall of And One, Street Ball, August 23rd. The following week, August 30th, we're doing Operation Flagrant Foul on disgraced referee Tim Donaghy. And then the last episode, the season finale, is one we directed on the 1983 America's Cup and possibly the greatest underdog story in the history of sports. And so it's not as well known, but I think it's going to be
Boys, are we talking sailing? We're talking sailing?
Sailing.
All right. I'm excited for that. Big sail guy over here. I went to one race this summer. I'm into it.
There we go. We got Trashers and we got sailing.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the connection is, but they're both fascinating stories.
I love it. And then look out for Mac's secret project location that he's on right now in the future. So thanks a lot, guys. That's Chapman and Maclain Way. Go check out their docs on Netflix.